carry the scars of many loves and heartaches. The story I'm about to share is of an older man who, in search of a new purpose in life, began dating a woman much younger than himself. He was captivated by her enthusiasm and intelligence. She was 20 years younger, full of life, and possessed a beauty he thought he would never see again. He did not suspect that this radiance hid a shadow that only he would notice over time. He immediately understood that this relationship would be challenging. Friends reacted, young people reprimanded him, and he had his own reservations, but at 70 years old, his heart still beat strongly, and he wanted to prove it to himself. Even though he managed to conquer and keep a young woman, his hesitation turned into obsession. He wanted to give everything as if everything was almost perfect. The last love story of his life, she gave him a new lease on life, but the price to pay was enormous, and only realized it later. At first, everything was almost perfect. She showered him with kind words, praise and compassion. He felt strong and virile, rediscovering a youth he thought was long gone. She knew exactly how to seduce him, and he succumbed to each of her gazes and movements. He went to great lengths to satisfy her, treating her as if she were royalty. But what he did not realize was that she began to impose minor demands, always with that air of superiority that he mook for pure attraction. The changes in her behavior became more and more evident over time, subtle humiliations disguised. His changes in her behavior, comments began to appear. She told him he should take better care of himself because people his age should not have such physical limitations. At first, he tried to laugh, believing it was a joke, but the frequency increased and the laughter began to fade. She never stopped telling him he was too old for her. The final straw was when she focused her criticisms on his performance in bed. He, who had always believed he could bring affection and emotional satisfaction, found himself facing harsh and pointed criticisms. She asserted that he was slow, predictable, and incapable of satisfying her like a younger man. Would he try to argue to convince her that age does not limit a person's ability to make others happy, but her comments were too cutting to be ignored? He then remembered. Would he try to argue the power he exercised, or rather his method? He assured her that, despite his lack of youthful strength, he knew how to delight her in a special, unique way. Through his devotion and care, he said it with a passion and confidence that few younger men could match. But instead of honouring him, she mocked what she considered a desperate attempt by an old man to be useful. This mockery tore his heart apart. He felt humiliated, but tried to convince himself that it was a test of patience and resilience. He hoped that by being understanding, she would eventually see his value in devotion. However, each of these statements pushed him to devalue himself further, and he began to perceive himself as unimportant and of little value in the eyes of a young woman. For anyone witnessing this, he made a decision story. It may seem simple to condemn his decision to stay, yet anyone who has lived a long time understands that love, especially in its most terrible form, can take us hostage and force us to accept things we would never have to tolerate. Otherwise, he was no longer just bound by the youth of the young woman, but also by the idea that he could prove himself to someone who seemed unable to see beyond his age. One night, following a dispute that made him feel even smaller, he made a decision. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a 70-year-old man with wrinkles of old age on his face and the weight of experience in his eyes. He recognized that self-love must speak louder because he could not live in the shadow of approval from someone who would never accept him for who he was. He faced her calmly, then decided to face her calmly. He indicated that he was ready to end the relationship because no matter how much he loved her, he could not continue to be humiliated. She looked at him in astonishment, as if she did not expect him to have the courage to do it. At that moment, he regained some of the dignity he had lost with each of her remarks. The conversation was unpleasant but liberating. He felt like he was finally acting his age, not in the sense of fragility, but in the sense of wisdom. He remembered all the years he had lived, the experiences he had, and the value he still possessed, no matter how many wrinkles he had, or his age upon leaving her house. Her house, he felt a sense of relaxation he had not known for months. He recognized that it is sometimes to accept that not everyone will understand the value we bring, especially those who only see the surface here, recognized that by submitting to humiliation, he had lost himself, yet by freeing himself, he regained not only his self-esteem, but also the tranquility of a love that only he could offer. The following days were difficult to live through. Loneliness returned, but it was a clean, dignified loneliness, without the burden of having to prove something to anyone. He realized that even without her, he remained a man of value, someone who embodied the pure spirit of what love is. This self-love a few months later allowed him to move forward. This event taught him that not all young people deserve to sacrifice their dignity, and that true love is one that accepts, respects, and cherishes all people, regardless of their physical abilities or age. A few months later, he discovered new joys in life. He reconnected with old acquaintances, visited places he had always wanted to see, and rediscovered activities he had abandoned. He recognized that his value did not depend on the approval of a younger woman, but rather on the peace he found in looking he had abandoned at himself. Each wrinkle on his face tells a story, and each grey hair marks a memory. He understood that aging brings the wisdom to know what is truly important. He no longer needed to sacrifice himself to satisfy others. Instead, he became more interested in his own satisfaction. This anecdote serves as a reminder to other older people who have the same doubts. The desire for love is understandable, but it should never come at the expense of inner. Serenity lessons are learned over time, and only those who have lived a long time understand the importance of preserving their dignity. In the face of the deceptive promises of youth and hindsight, he realized that this relationship had been a precious learning opportunity. It was a lesson in acceptance and the importance of putting one's own principles first. No matter the criticism, he learned that to be loved, he first had to love himself completely with all his flaws and strengths. For him, ending the relationship meant reclaiming his identity. Many see in this story an example of the importance of self-love, even when everything around seems to conspire against our confidence. Only the value of dignity, older people should see this film, because they understand the value of dignity. He discovered that a man's value is determined by his integrity in the face of adversity, not by his age. And it is this integrity that turns every wrinkle into a symbol of wisdom. Based on this story, I would like to propose 5 lessons for older people who have relationship problems. The first lesson is that as tempting as it may be to recreate the glory of youth with someone younger, it is the essential to keep your feet on the ground and not get lost in the first lesson. The illusion, many people like the character, end up devoting their time and energy to someone who does not truly appreciate them. The desire to prove that one still has vigor and capabilities can become a trap, forcing us to accept humiliations that we would never have tolerated at other stages of life. Love should not be a testing ground, but rather an environment of respect and mutual acceptance. The second lesson story teaches us is the value of self-love. By accepting costly comments about his performance in age, he felt like he was giving up a part of himself. He thought that tolerating her criticisms in the name of love was a noble act. But in reality, he was sacrificing his dignity. Loving oneself is a commitment that must predate any relationship. Because forgetting one's own value is to expose oneself to the contempt of others. Recognizing that we deserve respect and affection is the foundation of any healthy relationship. The third lesson is to have the courage to free oneself and accept loneliness as a kind of peace, even if it is only temporary. When he decided to end this relationship, it was more than just a breakup, it was a rehabilitation for himself. He chose the most difficult, but the third lesson, also the most valuable path, choosing to be alone rather than continuing to be humiliated, is a sign of strength. Sometimes loneliness is a place of restructuring self-esteem and not a punishment in truth. He gave himself the opportunity to regain his inner calm that no one could take away from him. The fourth lesson is that with age, our experiences and memory become true treasures, and those who do not recognize this only locked themselves into superficiality, wrinkles, grey hair. The fourth lesson sign of time tells a story and offers a learning opportunity. He understood that he did not need to model himself after an image of pristine youth, because what he had was much deeper. Those who seek the superficial will never appreciate the value of accumulated with. Therefore, it is useless to try to please someone who does not understand who we are. The fifth lesson is that being attentive to a partner's needs, particularly physical closeness, is the fifth lesson show of affection. He thought that even if he no longer had the physical vigour of his youth, he could express his devotion and desire through other means. This demonstration of affection and devotion often shows a man willing to put his partner's needs before his own pride. However, respect must be mutual offering. A certain closeness is a sign of interest, but should not be interpreted as an obligation or a cause for embarrassment. In this example, he learned that no matter how hard he tried to please her, his efforts must be recognized. The lesson he draws from this is that true closeness requires respect and consideration, not judgments or criticisms. If you were touched by the story and think these teachings can help others, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Share this message with others who might need to reflect on the value of dignity and self-love. The greatest life lessons come from the stories of people who have lived long enough to understand what is truly important. 7 signs. Women see you as weak and how to fix them. Did you know that women can instinctively pick up on subtle behaviours that show weakness? Psychology shows that these unnoticed cues shape how they see you, often affecting their level of respect and attraction. A lot of guys unknowingly show these signs thinking they're being considerate, but in reality, they're just lowering their presence. In this video, we'll uncover 7 signs that make women see you as weak, and most importantly, how you can fix them to become a more confident and desirable man. Welcome back to Stoic Monarch, where we dive deep into Stoic principles to guide you towards becoming a stronger, more self-assured man. In today's video, we'll uncover 7 ways women see you as weak and most men don't even realize it. These are subtle behaviors that can affect how women perceive your strength, confidence, and overall presence. By understanding and correcting these mistakes, you can become a more desirable and respected man. But first, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. And let's aim for 1,000 likes on this one. Let's get started. 1. You constantly seek her validation. Confidence is one of the most attractive traits a man can have. Yet, many guys unknowingly mess this up by always seeking validation from the woman they're into. If every decision you make depends on her approval, whether it's what to wear, where to eat, or how to act, you're sending the message that you lack self-assurance, while asking for input is normal, relying on her opinions. Too much makes you look uncertain. Imagine this. You're out on a date, and instead of choosing what you want to eat, you ask her, "Do you think I should get the pasta or the steak?" It may seem like a small thing, but constantly deferring to her for little decisions can be a big red flag. Women are drawn to men with a strong sense of self. If you always look to her for reassurance, she might start feeling like she's leading the relationship, which can hurt her attraction to you. The fix trust yourself more, make decisions confidently, even small ones. Women respect men who know what they want and stand by it. 2. You avoid confrontation at all costs. Cost being agreeable and avoiding unnecessary conflict can be a good thing. But if you refuse to stand up for yourself when it counts, you come off as weak. Women notice when a guy won't address issues, especially if he's being disrespected. If you're the type to just let things slide when you're clearly being mistreated, it shows you don't have backbone, and that's not attractive. Picture this: you spent an hour planning the perfect date, and she spends the whole time on her phone instead of addressing it. You just laugh it off or pretend it doesn't bother you. You might think you're being chill, but she might see it as a lack of self-respect. Women admire men who set boundaries. If you let disrespect slide, she'll respect you less. Standing up for yourself doesn't mean being aggressive. It means calmly setting your limits. If she does something that bothers you, address it directly, but in a respectful way. A woman who respects you will respond positively to your confidence. The key here is self-respect. If something feels wrong, don't hold it in. To avoid conflict, speak up and don't tolerate consistent disrespect. Women don't want a man they can walk all over. They want a man who values himself. 3. You overshare your insecurities too soon. Being emotionally open is great, but there's a difference between healthy vulnerability and oversharing your insecurities to the point that it feels like a burden. Women appreciate honesty, but they're not looking to be your therapist, especially early on. Imagine this: it's your second date, and instead of getting to know each other naturally, you start unloading all your fears and anxieties. You tell her how you struggle with public speaking, how you hate your job, and how you've never felt good enough in past relationships, while she might listen. Deep down, she may feel overwhelmed. Women respect men who acknowledge their struggles, but are actively working on them. If you're constantly seeking reassurance from her about yourself, doubt she might see you as emotionally fragile instead of venting. All your insecurities, focus on talking about your aspirations and growth. When you talk about challenges, frame them as things you're working through, not as things that define you. The fix: be mindful of when and how you share your vulnerabilities. Emotional depth is attractive, but only when it's balanced with strength and self-improvement. Show her that you recognize your struggles, but you're not defined by them. 4. You try too hard to impress her. There's a fine line between confidence and desperation, and a lot of guys unknowingly cross it by trying too hard to impress a woman, whether it's constantly bragging about your accomplishments, exaggerating stories, or overly highlighting your successes. Trying too hard comes across as insecurity, for example. If you're on a date and keep mentioning how much money you make, how many connections you have, or how amazing your achievements are, she's going to sense that you're overcompensating. Women appreciate success, but what's more attractive is a man who's secure enough in himself that he doesn't need to constant self-promote. The key is being authentic instead of proving your worth with words. Let your actions and confidence speak for themselves. Be yourself and trust that your value will be recognized naturally. 5. You lose emotional control during disagreements. Disagreements are a natural part of any relationship, but how you handle them speaks volumes about your emotional strength. If you're quick to anger, get overly defensive, or react impulsively, it sends a clear message that you lack. Act self-control. Women instinctively respect men who can navigate conflict with composure rather than aggression. Think about it: if a minor misunderstanding makes you raise your voice, slam doors, or storm off, it signals immaturity, a man who can't regulate his emotions. In small disagreements, will likely struggle with bigger challenges in life. Women are drawn to men who can remain steady even in stressful situations, because emotional stability equals security. If she feels that your moods are unpredictable, she may start to see you as weak rather than strong. On the other hand, true confidence is shown through patience and rationality. Instead of reacting impulsively, take a step back, pause, breathe. Think if she disagrees with you, don't take it as an attack instead of proving you're right. Focus on understanding her perspective and calmly stating your own. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means mastering them. A strong man expresses himself firmly, but without losing his temper. He knows that his worth isn't defined by proving a point in the heat of the moment. The next time a disagreement arises, pay attention to how you react. Are you letting your emotions control you, or are you in control of them? The man who can stay calm. Under pressure earns not only respect, but also admiration. 6. You apologize excessively, even when it's not your fault. There's nothing wrong with saying, "I'm sorry," when you've actually done something wrong. In fact, taking responsibility for your mistakes is a sign of strength. But when you apologize excessively, especially for things that aren't your fault, you send a signal of insecurity and self-doubt. Women notice when a man is too eager to please, constantly backtracking just to avoid conflict. If you're always saying, "Sorry for bothering you," "Sorry for having an opinion," or "Sorry for asking," it creates the impression that you're seeking approval rather than standing firm in who you are, over-apologizing. Makes it seem like you lack confidence in your own words and actions. Imagine you express your thoughts on a topic and she disagrees. If your immediate reaction is to apologize and change your stance, she will sense weakness. Women respect men who can hold their ground without being arrogant. You can acknowledge someone's feelings without apologizing for existing. Instead of saying, "I'm sorry for speaking my mind," simply say, "I see your point, but I stand by my opinion to fix this." Be mindful of your apologies. Ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong? If not, replace unnecessary apologies with more confident statements. A man who values himself doesn't feel the need to constantly apologize for his presence. 7. You put her on a pedestal and neglect your own life. It's natural to admire a woman you like, but when you start treating her like she's above you, prioritizing her over your own goals, friendships, and self-respect, you weaken your own position. Women may enjoy attention, but they don't want to be worried if she senses that you're making her the center of your world. While neglecting your own purpose, she will start to lose respect for you. A strong man has his own mission. He doesn't cancel his plans. Just because she texts, he doesn't abandon his ambitions just to be more available. When a woman sees that you have a life you're passionate about, she respects you more because she knows she can't manipulate you. Imagine 2 men. One immediately drops everything the moment she calls. Always eager to please the other, enjoys her presence, but maintains his own routine hobbies and goals. Who do you think she will respect? More women are naturally drawn to men with purpose and direction to fix this shift. Your mindset, your life should never revolve around another person. It should be built on your own values. Growth and success. Prioritize your goals. Maintain your independence. And remember that you are the prize when you carry yourself with that confidence. She will admire you more, not less. A man's strength isn't in how loud he speaks, but in how deeply he commands respect. Every action you take sends a message about your value. If you constantly seek approval, avoid standing up for yourself or lose emotional control, you're telling the world that you lack inner strength. But imagine the difference when you walk into a room, knowing exactly who you are. A man who doesn't beg for validation, doesn't tolerate disrespect, and doesn't lose control in difficult moments. That's the kind of man women admire and respect. That's the kind of man you should strive to be. If you found this video valuable, hit the like button, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Your journey to self-mastery starts now. Stay strong, stay stoic, and I'll see you in the next one.